Hey, I'm Nina. Welcome to the Panic Button. Have you ever heard of the Iced Coffee Hour? Well, it's a podcast show on YouTube. They're kind of middle of the road fellas, but they had on a left-wing YouTuber / TV show host, David Pakman, on. They asked him the question, why trans women belong in women's sports? I haven't reacted to this yet because I have a feeling it is going to make me a little angry. So I didn't want to put the cart before the horse.
What are your thoughts on trans women competing against biological women in sports? Depends on the sport, and I think not enough is known about this yet. So I think, first of all, I try to defer to peer-reviewed research and medical experts on this. So I'm not super interested in what right-wing pundits or whatever have to say about it. From the research I've done and the peer-reviewed research that is out there, it's not, it's sort of it's a more complicated issue, I think, than get men out of women's sports, which is what you hear from Trump at rallies. There are certain sports where it really doesn't seem to matter. Sports like what? Equestrian.
Oh my God. Jesus. So he needs research in order to know if men are stronger than women. And even that, he needs research to know if men are going to be stronger than women after taking estrogen. How is it possible? Brainworms? It's brainworms, that's what it is. See, what sports? Tennis? Cycling? MMA? Skiing? What sports? Because it really is as simple as get men out of women's sports because they're biologically male. So it really is that simple. And leaning on this whole men can be women thing and be in women's sports, we just need more research. Leaning on that is pretty, it just makes you look really stupid. I don't even know how else to put it but that.
It's like what? Equestrian, archery, others that, you know, there are sports that are gender segregated and don't really seem like they need to be. There's, you can make the argument that there's gymnastics events that don't really need to be gender segregated.
Oh my God. I can't believe we just said that. Holy shit. Have you? Wow. Oh my God. So men are much stronger in the upper body. Can you imagine the women gymnasts trying to do rings? That's insane.
That aren't based on strength. So you've got a category of, so there's the totality of sports. Then you've got this gendered sports. Mm-hmm. So we're slicing. Some of these, it doesn't.
All sports are based on strength. All sports are based on, what sport isn't based on strength? And don't say chess. I don't believe that's a sport. It's competition.
Slicing. Some of these, it doesn't really seem like it makes much of a difference. There are others where, if you look at some of the research data, if you were to restrict it to assigned male at birth individuals who have been on the right hormone treatments for X period of time, that the performance advantage falls within a standard deviation, which basically means like it's within the normal variability you would expect among those born biologically female or assigned female at birth. So
that is a bunch of bullshit. That's lies. He's pretty much blatantly lying right now.
And female at birth. So like that would be an argument to me for saying in those cases it doesn't really matter. My kind of take on this is I think a lot of this stuff is new enough that we don't have every answer yet. There are some who are really using this to find a new public enemy number one. For a while, it was gay men. Now it's moved on to the trans community, to scapegoat in some cases. I'm against that. I'm for treating everybody.
Gay men was in the 80s, dude. It's been straight men have been the enemy for a long time. Straight white men. So I don't know why he said gay men and then now trans, which when he says trans, he ain't talking about the biological women who think they're men. He's talking about the biological men who think they're women. Whenever we're talking about this trans thing, the only issues we ever have is when the men who think they're women come in and start doing shady shit. I find it hilarious that he's not defending biological women at all in this. Not even talking about trans men because we know they're biological women and they would not be able to compete against trans women, biological men. I would dare to say that most of these guys who are prancing around as women are probably straight. Majority of them. Or because of the estrogen pumping through their body, bisexual. So he's pretty much just defending mentally ill, straight, or bisexual men. And that's not gay men. Ain't gay men.
I'm against that. I'm for treating everybody with dignity. So yeah, you know, I think I don't have an answer.
Even pedophiles?
I don't have an answer. It seems obvious that in some sports it doesn't make sense, and it should be okay to say that. And it also seems like in some sports, it really doesn't make a difference. And we're still learning about other sports. We're still learning about the impact. You know, there's those who say, David, you know, muscle mass doesn't matter because there's something about the angle of the hips to the femur that I'm just not sure about that yet. We're still learning about a lot of this.
Muscle mass doesn't matter because of the angle of the hips and the femur. Yeah. Okay. So female hips look very different from male hips because we have to push out babies. You know, so we have a wider opening there. Not talking about the vag, I'm talking about the bones. So I don't know how that relate. I mean, that alone will change someone's performance. So angle of the hips. I'm just trying to figure this out. What the hell he's going? But who the fuck told him that muscle mass doesn't matter because of the angle of the hips and the femur? What would that have to do with like swimming or running or any of that stuff? But muscles are attached to the bones and the bones don't move unless the muscles move. And it doesn't matter the angle of the bone attached to the femur, whatever the hell he's talking about. It doesn't matter because in order for those bones to move, the muscles need to contract. The bigger and stronger the muscle, the faster the muscle can flex, extend, how much power and force it can produce.
We're still learning about a lot of this stuff. And then the other thing I'll say is a lot of athletic institutions have already been dealing with this for decades when it comes to intersex individuals. And they have existing protocols which could be looked at. And very few people.
Intersex individuals is a smaller percentage than I believe trans individuals. Intersex individuals. There's more trans women, men who think they're women, than there are intersex individuals. And I didn't hear an uproaring of intersex people going, hey, we deserve to be in women's sports. We didn't hear anything from them. No big rallies or protests or anything like that from the intersex people. So whenever someone on the trans side tries to use intersex people, it's apples and oranges. They're using a mental condition, a mental illness, and they're trying to relate that to a physical deformity or a physical abnormality. These are two entirely different things. So if you even want to go for the intersex thing, I mean, have you ever looked up what a hermaphrodite is, what someone who's intersex is? It's pretty broad. It's any sort of genital abnormality. So it's not just the person has two different genitals. It could be anything as far as like a micro penis or a giant clitoris. It's just an abnormality outside of the norm. So when he brings up intersex people, I could say as a rebuttal, so you mean men with small penises? Are you talking about them? Or are you talking about the even smaller percent of intersex people that have either one fully formed vagina and then like internal testicles or something like that? His argument, it falls apart. Just like poof, it's gone. It's gone.
Be looked at. And very few people who are just about get men out of women's sports, very few of them take the time to look and say, oh, how does the NCAA handle this? Or how does this entity or that entity? And I think there's a lot to glean from that.
There was a lot of data on intersex people.
There's policies for how different athletic leagues handle those situations, which could be instructive in thinking about this issue.
I have never, at least I don't think I've met like an intersex person, and I don't even know how many exist. So I don't know if that's like
I think it's 1/3 of 1% of people I heard.
That
It
sounds
depends.
really high.
It
but I could be
depends.
completely
Yeah.
wrong.
Prove my point right there.
It depends.
But I could be completely
Yeah.
wrong.
It
If
sounds
you're
a little
intersex
low
and
to
you're
me.
listening,
Really?
I
That
think
sounds
there's a
loud,
couple
yeah.
things. There's a couple things that go on. There's a lot of, I don't know if the right thing is to call it, I want to be careful here. I don't know if it's called a treatment because treatment implies disease and I'm just not sure. I think that there are interventions, both hormonally and surgically, that are often done with folks that are born with different traits so that by the time they hit puberty, one would not know because
Right.
it's been dealt with in one way or another earlier in life. So I think that that's part of it.
Oh, this
So-
is
so-
1.7.
OHCHR.org says that 1.7% of people are intersex.
Yeah. So there,
People born with sex characteristics that do not fit typical binary notions of male or female bodies.
I was
that is
thinking 1%.
fascinating.
You said 1/3.
And do you know how many people identify as trans? It ain't 1.7%, I'll tell you that. It's way more. But let's keep using intersex as an argument.
I was
That is
thinking 1%.
fascinating.
You said 1/3 of one. Maybe it's
Yeah.
1.7. And
Wow.
I think
That
it's in that
seems
range.
high to me,
Doesn't
but
it?
then again,
It's because of the broad definition. That's why it's higher.
Doesn't it?
I guess you wouldn't know if it. In a lot
So
of
then you
those
just
cases,
get treated when you're a kid and your parents don't tell you.
Yeah.
I don't know about don't tell you I'm stepping out of my medical
Sure.
knowledge.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe we're all
Yeah.
outside of the frame here, but that's fascinating. I
Yeah.
had no idea it was that high.
Yeah, but I think
assuming
the
that
point
true.
is there are resources that we could go to that have established protocols for this stuff, which could be really instructive.
It would also be interesting to measure the difference in intersex people versus biological male or biological female, because I don't know if there's even some like middle.
There is no middle where someone is born with fully developed vagina and a fully developed penis. It's usually they were leaning one way and then the other sex characteristics came in. I don't know how to explain it, but you get what I'm saying. So, oh my Lord, this guy is something else, man. So how about we just leave it how it was before? Where men compete in their sport and women compete in theirs. No one has had a problem with this until the incredible uptick in trans people. And I think that's only because somewhere along the line, COVID messed up these kids who were already messed up from getting participation trophies and never being punished, especially never having any hardships and being home and having nothing to do. And because these kids are already vain as it is, they obsessively focus on themselves to such a degree that they make themselves crazy and create almost like an imaginary friend, but it's them. Or like an alter ego. They create an alter ego and it's almost like a protection for them and they call themselves trans. I think it's just all up in their heads. It's like when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a wolf, a werewolf in particular. But I didn't get surgery for it. So I can't imagine growing up and having these adults be like, hey, you like blue? Little girl, you're probably a boy. They hate that gender is a social construct, and yet they adhere to it so much. And then, because these kids became obsessed with their own identities, they wanted to control everyone else. But instead of just accepting who they were and moving on in the world, they decided if people didn't see them the way they saw themselves, they were going to cause a scene and try to control other people. Because there's nothing important in their lives. They have to create something of importance in order to feel important. That's why there's so many of these quote-unquote trans people, which is why we have this men who think they're women in women's sports thing going on.